Here's a fact that sounds impossible until you look at the numbers. A country with no serious surface navy has spent the better part of 4 years humiliating one of the largest naval fleets on the planet. And it's still happening right now. Ukraine doesn't have a blue water fleet to speak of. What it has is drones, and drones alone have been enough to make Russia's Black Sea Fleet a fleet in name only. Let's go through how we got to where things stand today. The pattern was set early. Back in the opening weeks of the full-scale invasion, Ukraine sank the Moskva, the Black Sea Fleet's own flagship missile cruiser, dealing a blow that Russian naval planners never fully recovered from. From that point on, Ukraine kept adding to the tally using unmanned surface vessels like the Sea Baby and Magura series, striking ships, radar sites, and coastal infrastructure without ever needing a comparable fleet of its own. By last year, independent trackers had already logged around 30 Russian ships and boats destroyed or disabled since the invasion began. And that count has kept climbing well into this year. February 2026 brought one of the sharper reminders that occupied Crimea was never actually safe ground. Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Special Unit known as Primary, or the Ghosts, carried out a coordinated strike inside the peninsula that damaged a Project 22460 patrol ship, a Project 1496 M1 Sea Tug, a Project 16640 vessel, and a landing boat, while also claiming hits on an S-400 radar site, a 4-post reconnaissance drone, and a Ka-27 helicopter. Ukrainian officials framed the message plainly. Crimea, they said, is no safe harbor for the occupiers. Just days later, on March 2nd, Ukraine's General Staff confirmed a strike on the Russian naval base at Novorossiysk that damaged 2 Black Sea Fleet frigates, the Admiral Essen and the Admiral Makarov. Independent satellite analysis from open-source trackers went further, suggesting probable damage across 6 vessels total at that base, including minesweepers, corvettes, and support craft. The same wave of strikes hit the Sheskari's oil terminal, one of southern Russia's largest crude export facilities, damaging 6 of its 7 loading arms and setting off a fire big enough to dominate the skyline for hours. None of this has been limited to warships. Since late 2025, Ukraine's security service has run a parallel campaign against what's become known as the Russian Shadow Fleet, a network of roughly 1,000 aging tankers Moscow uses to keep exporting oil around Western sanctions and the G7 price cap. 2 of those tankers were sunk outright in the opening phase of that campaign, and by this spring, Naval News was tracking a running total of around 14 or 15 Russian-linked tankers damaged or destroyed since the effort began, including a strike on the tanker Arctic Metagaz all the way out in the Mediterranean. The logic is straightforward and brutal. Every tanker that doesn't make it back to a Russian port is a dent in the revenue funding the war effort, whether that tanker is technically a warship or not. Pravda's forces have gone out of their way to name the vessels they hit rather than leave them anonymous. Tankers like the Sanar 1, the Sanar 17, the Klimina, the Teti, the Alexei Savrasov, and the Penelope have all shown up by name in his Telegram posts, each one a roughly 7,000-ton deadweight carrier that Russia had been routing north toward Crimea, specifically to keep the peninsula fueled. Naming names like that isn't just documentation. It's a signal to every shipping company still willing to carry Russian cargo that anonymity isn't protection anymore. The tools behind this shift are almost entirely unmanned. Ukraine's naval drone program grew out of necessity rather than doctrine. With Russia controlling most of Ukraine's actual coastline early in the war, Kyiv leaned into small, fast, explosive-laden surface drones like the Sea Baby and Magura V5 series, supplemented more recently by longer-range strike drones such as the Firepoint FP1, which is what analysts believe was used in several of this year's larger tanker raids. These platforms cost a fraction of a conventional missile or warship, can be built and replaced quickly, and don't put a single Ukrainian sailor at risk if one is lost. That cost asymmetry is the whole story of how a country without a real navy has managed to functionally exile Russia's actual navy from large stretches of water it used to consider home turf, including the waters around Sevastopol itself, where the bulk of the Black Sea Fleet's major surface combatants have reportedly been relocated away from for extended stretches at a time. The most significant escalation, though, came this summer with an operation Ukrainian forces are calling Molochka, run out of the Unmanned Systems Forces and coordinated with the security service. It kicked off around July 6th with a single goal: choke the supply lines keeping Russian forces in occupied Crimea fed, fueled, and armed, using aerial and naval drones instead of a single large surface warship. Commander Robert Brovdy, who goes by the call sign Madyar, has been posting near-daily updates on the campaign's progress on Telegram. And the numbers he's reported are staggering for a navy that, on paper, doesn't exist. On July the 17th alone, his forces claimed 12 Russian Shadow Fleet vessels struck in the Black Sea in a single night. 9 dry cargo ships, 1 oil tanker, 1 gas carrier, and a tugboat, timed alongside a broader strike across the Crimean Peninsula that set off fires in multiple cities. By the end of the month, Brovdy put the cumulative total for the operation at 205 tankers and vessels struck since it began. 130 in the Sea of Azov and 75 in the Black Sea. Naval analysts covering the campaign have described it as proof that Russia's navy in the region has been beaten down to the point where it can no longer operate with any real confidence that it won't be hit, something that would have sounded absurd before this war. Ukraine's own Navy spokesperson, Captain Second Rank Dmytro Pletenchuk, laid out the strategic logic behind all of this in mid-July. Operations in the Sea of Azov have effectively paralyzed Russian fuel shipping and complicated resupply to occupied Crimea, and Ukraine has deliberately expanded the drone campaign to threaten the specific sea lanes Russia depends on most. The Novorossiysk to Bosphorus and Don to Bosphorus routes. Those 2 corridors matter enormously. The wider Azov Black Sea region accounts for something like a fifth of all Russian crude oil exports, and Novorossiysk itself is Russia's single largest seaport. Squeeze those lanes, and you're not just harassing a garrison, you're leaning directly on the Kremlin's wallet. The pressure hasn't let up as summer wore on. On July 29th, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said his forces had struck an oil refinery and logistics center in Russia's Ryazan region overnight, along with another refinery in Perm and an export terminal and defense plant in Rostov, part of a broader blitz that Russian authorities said killed at least 3 people in Russia and occupied Crimea. The very next day, July 30th, Brovdy's Unmanned Systems Forces hit a Russian naval drone base at Snizhne near occupied Yevpatoria. Footage released afterward showed a substantial blast tearing through the facility Russia had been using to build and stage its own sea drones aimed at Ukrainian shipping. The same day's operations reportedly also took out radar shelters above Yalta, a Buk M3 air defense system on a trailer in Donetsk Oblast, and radar installations across the border in Russia's Rostov region. It's a level of reach into what used to be considered secure Russian and Russian-occupied territory that simply didn't exist a few years ago. Russia hasn't been a passive target through any of this, and the war at sea has run in both directions, even if the numbers favor one side more than the other. The Black Sea Fleet's patrol ships have intercepted and destroyed a number of Ukrainian uncrewed surface vessels over the years, including multi-boat attacks near Sevastopol that Russian officials say were repelled without damage to their own vessels. Russian missile and drone strikes have also hit Ukrainian and civilian shipping directly. A grain cargo ship sank in the Black Sea near Odessa on July 26th, after being struck by a Russian missile a week earlier, and Russian drones have repeatedly targeted merchant vessels off the Odessa coast throughout the year. This isn't a one-sided turkey shoot. It's an asymmetric fight where Ukraine has found a way to make its lack of a conventional fleet almost irrelevant, while Russia still holds real capacity to strike back at exposed civilian and military shipping. Maybe the clearest single symbol of how far this has gone. Russia has now canceled its own Navy Day parade in St. Petersburg for a second consecutive year, citing the ongoing threat from Ukrainian drones. For a navy built around the memory of Soviet-era sea power and national prestige, calling off your own flagship celebration because you can't guarantee the safety of the ships and crowds involved is about as blunt an admission of the situation as it gets. There's a financial layer to all of this that's just as important as the footage of burning ships. The shadow fleet exists in the first place because of the price cap Western nations imposed on Russian crude in 2022, and every tanker Ukraine manages to sink, damage, or scare off the water directly undermines Moscow's main workaround for that cap. With the Azov-Black Sea corridor alone responsible for something close to a fifth of Russia's total crude exports, a sustained campaign against the tankers moving through it isn't just a military story. It's an economic one that shows up eventually in Russian state revenue and, by extension, in what the Kremlin can afford to spend on the war in the East. That's very likely part of why Ukraine has been willing to name individual tankers publicly, rather than simply reporting vague totals. It turns each strike into a piece of evidence aimed as much at insurers, shipping registries, and Western sanctions enforcers as at Russian military planners. The Kerch Bridge, the single road and rail link connecting occupied Crimea to the Russian mainland, has been a recurring target since a 2022 truck bomb and a 2023 sea drone strike first damaged it. Russia has poured hundreds of millions of dollars into repairs and additional drone defenses since, and the bridge remains operational today, but only at reduced capacity and under speed restrictions, with heavy and hazardous cargo, like fuel, barred from crossing it directly. Ukraine hasn't let up on the vessels guarding it either. Overnight on April 30th, Ukraine's Navy struck 2 Russian boats tasked with protecting the crossing: the FSB patrol vessel Sobol and the anti-sabotage boat Grachanok, inflicting what the Ukrainian Navy described as both fatal and medical casualties among the crews. On June 21st, President Zelensky confirmed strikes on both sides of the bridge in a single night, hitting maritime oil transport logistics in Russia's Krasnodar region on one end and an oil depot in occupied Kerch on the other, part of what he called long-range sanctions against the occupier's military logistics and energy industry. By July, the fight for the sea lanes had become genuinely symmetrical in a way that hadn't happened before in this war. On July 10th, Ukrainian drone boats struck 13 vessels in the Sea of Azov in a single day, including 10 tankers, prompting Russia to shut down the Don Azov Channel and close the Kerch Strait to shipping requests entirely, cutting off a route that carries roughly a quarter of Russia's wheat exports from the Rostov and Krasnodar grain belt. Ukraine's own maritime corridor took a comparable hit around the same time. Russian missiles and drones struck 28 commercial ships over the course of a month, killing 21 seafarers and port workers until ship owners simply stopped sending vessels into Ukrainian waters altogether. Traffic into Ukrainian ports went from 4 or 5 ships a day in mid-July to 0 by July 22nd, prompting major carriers like Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd to suspend calls at Chornomorsk and several of Ukraine's grain terminals to stop buying cargo outright. 2 countries that together account for roughly a third of the world's wheat trade had, for a stretch this summer, each effectively knocked out a meaningful piece of the other's export capacity. A level of mutual disruption to global food markets that hadn't really been seen since the original grain deal collapse back in 2023. The Black Sea has also stopped being a 2-country story. Turkey, Romania, and other NATO members bordering the sea have steadily built up their own presence there, with Romania taking delivery of a new Turkish-built Milgem-class patrol vessel this July, and Turkey separately expanding naval export relationships with countries like Indonesia. That buildup hasn't kept the wider region free of incidents tied to the war. A Russian drone struck a Turkish-flagged Panamanian-registered cargo ship on June 22nd. A reminder that neutral shipping keeps getting caught in a fight that technically involves only two of the sea's littoral states. Russia's own Black Sea Fleet hasn't been rendered toothless either. Its Caliber cruise missiles, fired from both ships and submarines, still show up periodically in combined strikes against Ukrainian targets well away from the coast. And this remains very much a fight where both sides can still hurt each other, even if one side is doing it with a fraction of the resources of the other. So where does that leave things heading into August? Russia's Black Sea Fleet still exists on paper, with hulls, crews, and a base at Novorossiysk. It's been forced to rely on more heavily, since largely abandoning Sevastopol's waters back in 2024, after roughly 125 reported attacks that year alone pushed its major surface combatants out. But its ability to operate freely, resupply Crimea, protect its shadow fleet, or even hold a parade without fear of attack has been steadily stripped away by a campaign that costs Ukraine a fraction of what a conventional navy would, run largely by drone operators instead of ship crews. Whether Russia can adapt its air defenses and drone hunting capacity fast enough to change that picture, or whether Ukraine's unmanned systems forces keep expanding the list of ports and vessels they can reach, is the question that's actually going to decide who controls the Black Sea by the time this war eventually ends.